time to go live, so I'll push the button. And hopefully we do the usual. Push the button, push. Right. All being well, we can hear me. And
hopefully you can hear me.
You've gone super pixelated. So Jan is in
So have you.
114. There we go. I'm looking good.
Yeah, no, something's going wrong with internet. I blame you. It was working fine a minute ago. Hello, Munzer. How are you?
Excellent. We can be heard. Good evening, everybody. We are going to take a look at old school graphics today in new games. And what do we mean by that?
We mean, hello, everybody. How are you? We mean, there's been a move for a while now to go into sort of retro style gaming. It's not just roguelikes, it's a lot of things. The obvious example would be something like Minecraft, but a bunch of other games came out with it, which I find very interesting because when I was young, the push was always for photorealism. All through the 90s, all the games magazines were talking about how one day games would be photorealistic. And the moment we hit that point, it's no longer suitable for a small development team.
Yes.
So you get these incredible games with like old school graphics, but they play very differently than you'd think.
So one of the things that is, I think, really critical is if you are a small team or an individual making a game, going for the lower graphical bar means that you can end up developing a game and actually releasing it.
Although we say that, it's still a lot of work.
Oh, definitely a lot of work.
So let's do some hellos. We've got Munzer. Hello, Munzer. We've got Vertex Rage. Hello, Vertex Rage. Don't be too angry. Is it Rage? Yeah. Don't be too angry at the vertices. When they're on their own, they're fine. It's just when you get too many of them together, they start, they're a bit facey.
Oh, it's like
Gerard,
the
we've got Mind Stammer. They're just not normal. Look on your face. Okay, so this all came about because Michael played Terraria for the first time in ages.
I thought I was getting turned off. Told off then because you're like, Michael.
No.
Oh, what have I done?
Michael was playing Terraria or Terraria. Michael was playing Terraria. And he said to me, it's weird because I expected it to be a really simple, childish game, but it's really not. So some games we'd like to talk about today. Terraria, Starbound, Noita, probably Streets of Rogue, and why don't we add in, there was another one that I just had in my mind a second ago, but it's gone.
Starview Valley. Is it Starview
That was
Valley?
the one.
Yes.
Yes,
that's one that I've actually played in the past, and why I thought Terraria would be noddy, essentially. It was
noddy will only make sense for people who grew up in the UK or France.
Simplistic and simple, basically.
Yeah, noddy is a series of children's books.
So yeah, I
hello, Roderick.
I've since settled into the game. I played it for a couple of hours because I think you really do need to do that in order to get an idea about the game mechanics and everything else. Jumping in initially, one of my first thoughts with Terraria was, in fact, I remember the very first time I played it, there's like a big eyeball boss. And I happened to come across that on my first playthrough. And I was like, this game's a bit hardcore. That's one.
Well, it's interesting because it seems to be riding off the back of sort of the whole series of games inspired by Minecraft, right? Yeah. Minecraft tapped into something. Minecraft wasn't the first game to do what it was doing. In fact, it wasn't the first game that Notch released that was doing what it was doing. Infiniminer was doing what Minecraft was doing before then. But Minecraft really sort of tapped into something.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that the concept of let's take Minecraft and make it two-dimensional feels like it should be simpler. But they've added a lot of complexity and depth into it.
You also have, certainly I've played far more Minecraft than I have done any of the other games. And I found that I was projecting what I'd learned in one game onto another, which is quite common if you start to get the hang of certain tropes. Like all survival games, what's the first thing you do? Punch a tree.
I mean, in fairness, it's the first thing I do when I go outside anyway.
That's why there are no trees left in your village.
And why my hands don't work.
And there are just floating foliage high up.
So yeah, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking specifically about survival games,
No,
but I do want to ask you a question. Would you say that Terraria is a survival game?
I don't know yet. It feels like more of an exploration game because it's got a mission. I think it's got missions rather than just survive. And you could say the same about Minecraft. The idea is to beat the end
I
boss.
mean, there are plenty of survival games that have missions, but
Yeah,
for some reason, Terraria and I would say Starbound don't feel like that. You do have to survive. There is food, there is
yeah.
water, but
I don't think you have to eat in
I don't know,
Terraria, but you do in Starbound. It's a mechanic
you do
they
in
added.
Starbound.
Yeah, and it's an interesting mechanic to add because it can be really frustrating. I remember the first time I played. We are now talking about survival games. I remember the first time I played No Man's Sky, and I landed on a hostile world and just died because of thirst, because I couldn't find anything because it was a desert world or something along those lines, which was not much fun.
I mean, I've done that with Minecraft seeds where you type one in, it's like, and I'm on a tiny island with one cactus and a creeper.
Not even a tree to punch. What is going on?
So before we get like too into it, why don't you explain to people like a little elevator pitch? What is Terraria?
Uh, is it so? I've only played
Because we
like
have got these screenshots for them.
an hour and a half of the game. I would initially I would describe it as a almost a 2D Minecraft, just so people would get the idea about what the game looks like, because ultimately looks are the first thing you see when
So
you're
you can
playing a game.
explore, you can dig ridiculously far down.
Yes,
There's lots of different
yeah.
biomes. There's lots of different threats.
And the
There's things you
biomes
can uncover.
now the biomes appear to be difficulty. So they appear to be gated with difficulty, which isn't something that Minecraft is. So the first thing I did was went off exploring and rapidly died to some hideous vampire werewolf type beasts, which actually sounded quite horrible as well. As in
I've
a
not
good
played
sound.
Terraria in a very long time, but
Yeah,
it's quite an old game now.
it took a while to get the hang of the building mechanic as well, because I expected there to maybe be roof pieces with the fact that you can make individual floors and stuff. And when I put a floor over my head, I was still getting rained on, and it took me a while to get the whole premise of the game, that the idea is to build a small village or interconnected rooms with a table and light source. I think walls, table, and a light source. And so for ages, I was looking for a bed. That's a standard trope, but you need somewhere to sleep. But I didn't Google it because I was very keen on having the raw experience to see what the mechanic is. How do you work it out? In the end, I did go to that little dude. There's a guy right at the very beginning. He says, "Hey, if you want to find out what to do or you're stuck, just ask me." So I just kept clicking the hints button. I was like, "Oh, okay." I got to the bit where it says, "Make yourself a village and people will come." I was like, "Oh, okay." That bit wasn't clear, and the only way I think I could have ever found that out was to accidentally build a table, chairs, and a sealed room with a light source.
I mean, my memories of Terraria involve lots of grappling hooks, giant boss fights, and effectively 7 Days to Die style blood moons. I know it's 7 Days to Die is a later game and it's not that, but that kind of thing. And neighbor's dog barking. I do recall getting a little frustrated with the fact that it felt like it was all about boss battles, and I think that was the point I stopped playing. It is surprisingly fun. It is surprisingly difficult, especially on higher difficulty levels.
That's what caught me off guard significantly was the difficulty, and that's where you and I had that conversation about. Well, it kind of harks back to old school gaming, where games were just difficult. Not all
Sometimes
games,
even unfinishable. Yeah. I mean, the famous example is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game, which cannot be finished, as far as I'm aware, unless someone has managed it. Like, it's just impossible.
I remember that getting pretty difficult later on. I think I was playing it on my Amiga back in the day, but yeah, it was it was definitely a difficult game. And I think the notion of like waypoints and checkpoints, obviously, with some of the older games, when you died, that was it. You're dead. You'd have to start right from the beginning again. At least, and Terraria gives you at least gives you the options on your difficulty levels, whether you're a casual playthrough, whether you're just going to drop some coins, or whether you drop everything that you're carrying. And so we get this kind of modernization of being able to progress at a ability level that you're comfortable with. But I do like having that
Yeah,
that slider.
and part of that is a technological difference, right? I mean, there was a time where you couldn't just let people save whenever they wanted because
I mean, memory
you were
cards on
loading from
consoles were
floppy
a thing.
disks. Right. But even, I mean, I remember playing games in like 1982, and you would get a code that you could type in and start at that level because it just wasn't feasible. The alternative was you'd put in a blank cassette tape and save,
Wow.
which some games did. But as technology evolved, that sort of became less important. Terraria is an interesting game. It's only existing in Roderick's head, and I don't know how easy it is, but I look forward to seeing it.
I remember when you said the sort of like the code that you type in to get to a certain level. Those were often born not for the players; they were for play testers. I need to start at this level to make sure that it works. But I remember when I was playing, I think it was Goblins 3, where you had to turn, or Settlers back in the day, you had to turn to page 500 and read out the third
Oh
word
yeah,
of
yeah.
the second paragraph. It's like, whoa.
The early copy protection and DRM stuff.
I mean, when your manual is this thick, it is a genuine thing, because to copy the manual, obviously it wouldn't be an issue these days with PDF, but to copy the manual would have been the cost of the game to photocopy all of those pages.
I remember when original Elite came out, and you got a little plastic rectangle with a split window in it, and you had to hold it in front of a pattern on the screen. This is a ZX Spectrum screen, so really low fidelity graphics, and then type in the letters you saw.
Yeah.
And it was so frustrating. But anyway, so Terraria, very blocky, pixely style graphics, quite a lot of depth to it. And then later on, the same company, Chucklefish, and I think the same developer, Relogic, same developer,
Right.
released Starbound. Now, Starbound is a very ambitious game and quite a lot of fun to play. It is not a sequel to Terraria, but sometimes it looks like one. It's like a spiritual successor to Terraria. And there are some very interesting changes. One of which is there's a lot more of a tutorial going on.
Yeah,
For those who don't
definitely.
know, Starbound is a big open world Terraria style open world game where you are the last person or people if you're playing with your friends, and they have a really interesting friend play mechanic, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Of some stellar organization, stellar police organization that's just been destroyed by a big alien, and you're the only one left, and you're on a broken spaceship, and you're crash landing on a little planet, a little garden world, and you've got to find enough stuff to power up a teleporter to go to a place to fix your ship. And then, if you want, there's a whole plot you can follow, and if you don't, you can just go and do your thing.
Yeah.
Mikey, did you say you played Starbound recently?
Yes, I gave it a quick go after we had a conversation earlier on about it. Yeah, and it was definitely a completely different game. There's far more dialogue in it as well. It was more like you were part of a world rather than what am I doing?
Right, and I think that's it feels a lot less like a dreamlike situation because everyone's talking to you.
Yeah,
whole villages can read you. Like if you start going on a murder spree, all the guards will attack you. It starts off with you picking which alien race you are.
yeah,
And they've all got little cultures. And the only real difference it makes is what you look like and what ship you get. And the ships are upgradable and expandable, and you can, if you want, use your ship as a base.
yeah.
But what's interesting is in order to get to certain stars, you need a certain type of drive, I think. I might be confusing No Man's Sky, but the type of star it is the difficulty gate. So if you've got stuff to survive in a fire world, you need to go to a fire world to get your next stuff, that you will start looking for fire stars.
Yeah.
The universe is enormous. I'm actually not sure how big it is, but there's so many different planets. Each one is basically a Terraria map. And it's a lot of fun playing by yourself, playing together, though lots of procedure-generated weapons, lots of procedure-generated quests. They went and added things like a bounty hunter system where you could board spaceships and get a bounty. the ability to make your own space station if you want. Like, you
That's
can
pretty
start a
awesome.
village. You can, right, there's a whole bunch of
Yeah.
stuff you can do. And you can play multiplayer. Now, you can also do this in Terraria, but what's interesting is you can rent a Starbound server, right?
Okay.
And
Yep.
it'll just keep going persistently. Or if I'm playing Starbound and I invite you to my game, you will appear on the planet you were on, where your base is, and your base is just there on that planet. The rest of the galaxy is using my save file.
That's an interesting
And if we're in a
mechanic.
party, you can teleport to my ship and we can go on adventures together.
Well, that's good because
Right?
it means that I can, if I've just started the game, I can still experience the game without tens of hours
You
of
can still
play.
experience it. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. And that, to me, that's a very, very modern design aesthetic, right? If you want to play multiplayer, all we're going to do is just take your save data with my character. We can use my ship if we want. We can both go to the same place if we're within jump range of each other. But if not, teleport to teammate,
Yeah.
and we're off on adventures together.
That's
Which
a
I think is
very
great. So if you want, you can start a little village together. I mean, obviously, if you're not playing at the same time, you're going to need a server to keep it persistent.
Yeah.
But it solves a problem that you and I were talking about with open world games. Now, this is a bit tangential,
That's fine.
but as
That's
you may or
what
may
we
not
do.
know, I have played a lot of Ark. I have a very big
Really?
soft spot for Ark.
Yes.
Something like, how many hours have I played of Ark?
A lot. Is it over
Probably shouldn't.
1,000?
Easy.
Easy. I've played like 40 hours. Not much at all. But yeah.
Oh my.
One
I've played 1,935.2 hours. I think the 0.2 is a bit much.
Yeah.
I was probably FK for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's speaking about multiplayer and the way that it integrates that. You and I had a great experience recently with Left 4 Dead 2, where and it was incredibly great. It was a graceful handover of a disconnection. So I think your game crashed, but you were
hosting.
And what happened was I just continued, and the character in the game got replaced by an AI. And I just stood there, wait for you to restart Steam, invited you in, and you replaced the character that you were missing. And I just think that's how old
with
now?
one health.
It remembered how
one
much
health.
It remembered you had no health. But you think about it, and you think modern games don't always have that kind of facility to just come back in, even if they're massively multiplayer. I know if you for Apex Legends, that was one of the things I liked about that. If you dropped out, if you like game crashed or whatever, providing your squad was still alive, you could rejoin. And I don't know how many
you're
do
not having
that.
to keep a persistent large map going, right? You can just do a handover. And in fact, Steamworks has the ability to just assign a new host based on the current game state. If your code can carry it, the protocols are there.
Yeah.
So if obviously Valve made Left 4 Dead and Valve made Steam, so it's working off the back of that technology anyway. But if you're making a game where if you're doing peer-to-peer networking and one of the peers drops, select a new host.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting was we've tried playing Ark a few times, sometimes with servers, sometimes face-to-face. And Mike has less free time than I do because Mike has children in the house. And it turns out they take a lot of
watering, feeding,
exercise. Like you have to take them out and let them do their business in the street and stuff.
Is that children?
So what was happening was every time we played like a server game, Mike would come and play like once a week, and everyone else was in there like 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So Mike would turn up, and suddenly everyone's carrying like assault rifles and has lots of dinosaurs. He's like, "So what do I do?" It's like, "You can ride this dinosaur." I'm like, "I've never tamed one," and he's not having fun with it.
No.
Something like, "Here's your world. You can now teleport over to Jan's world and play there, but your world is untouched.
Yeah.
You can keep developing at your own speed. This is your thing. If you want, people can come visit your stuff, but that's yours."
Yeah,
that feels like an interesting solution for that.
For long-term listeners or watchers of the live stream, that Ark has been one of those things that's come up plenty of times. I liked the game, but disliked it at the same time. There was a real cognitive dissonance as to what was going on in the background and why I wasn't getting on with it. It turns out that it's just the fact that I think it's almost the cognitive dissonance of you log in and there's like a whole new village or the whole place has changed. It's like you, it's there's no
Yeah, you're
continuity.
just left behind. You're not getting the gameplay.
Yes.
Right. Whereas my experiences with Ark, my favorite experiences, and I will frequently, like every few months, get a server, play it with some friends for like 2-3 months, and then everyone burns out and we do something else. Right? It's what it's for. We don't do the boss fights. I mean, we've done a couple of boss fights, but we don't try and go through the plot. We just build a thing, have some adventures, and then stop. But it requires everybody playing roughly the same amount of time and being on at roughly the same times. Like it's a social experience. If it's an MMO where we're building the shared world, then you get left behind.
Very easily, yeah. I mean, it only takes like a few extra minutes of not playing or not going off and collecting that extra resource or taming in the case of
I feel
the
like we should be
dinosaurs.
putting links to some of these games. So I'm going to put a link for Starbound if you've not played it. It's been out for a while now. It's a surprisingly full-featured game for where's the thing for the style. Like you'd expect it to be very simplistic, but the team who made it really put a lot of work into it.
Vertex Rage actually says something really something that resonates with me here. I've something similar even with single player games, like going back to a save from a couple of months ago. Most of the time results in me just restarting the game. I had exactly the same experience with The Last of Us. So I got The Last of Us on PS4 and I started going through. What are you pointing at?
My chat's vanished. I can't post it.
Uh-oh. I can't help you with that. Try turning it off and on again.
And then...
But yeah, in The Last of Us, I got to the point where when I reloaded it, it wasn't even a couple of months. It was like 3 weeks or something crazy like that. But when I reloaded it, I couldn't remember the controls. I'd lost that dexterity. And obviously games like that get more and more difficult and challenging the further you go through them. So not only did I not really have the right controls, I also didn't, I was getting defeated by these enemies that were too tough for me.
I had that experience with Crusader Kings 3. I was really enjoying it and like building this little story and like an empire that rose and fall, and stopped playing it for a few weeks. Came back, couldn't remember any of it. Couldn't remember the people, couldn't remember what I was doing, couldn't remember, where the dangers were. Just like that, I'm done.
It's especially true.
Stuff showing up in chat.
Yes, I can see
I'm not you, so I know you can see it. Can everyone else see the link I posted?
So I've often thought okay, so I'll read out Vertex Rage. Yeah, I wonder if there's anything on the game design front that could help with that. One of the things that I do personally, especially I did it a lot with Oblivion and a lot with Skyrim, where you go off and you're doing stuff and maybe you've got multiple quests. So a decent questing system can help you with what you're doing at the time. That can be really helpful. But if you're doing something that doesn't have that, the ability to maybe create your own checklist within the game, almost like a notes system, might help.
Yeah, a notes system would be great.
I would
actually go the other way. I would say I don't know that it is possible, because if you're making something where the whole point is being so sucked into this world and it's huge, there's so much to do. Crusader Kings or Ark or whatever it might be. Civilization is a great example. If you don't play Civ for a few days and you come back to your map, it's like, I have no investment in this anymore.
Yeah.
I think part of that is drawing you in. And if you're not drawn in for long enough and come back to it, you kind of have to start afresh. And for some games, that is deeply frustrating. One example,
it can be hours.
I didn't
as well.
install Starbound today because you can skip the little bit in the place where it gets blown up, but you can't go to any planets until you've done the first boss fight.
Which is
I don't want to. I want a working ship, please, and I don't currently have a save game that I could just use for it.
Okay, I'm going to go back to both Skyrim and Oblivion, where if you played these games, you've probably done this yourself, or in any other game that forces you through a tutorial each time, and especially with those games, you kind of picked as you're going, and then at the end it went, "Are you sure?" So you save before that exit point, and then you can start all new games from that save point. And I remember with Oblivion when I accidentally overwrote my save file for the starting game. I was like,
"Oh yeah,
no, I've got to go through the blooming sewers again."
There used to be a mod for Skyrim. I actually think it's been taken down off Nexus now because Nexus changed something, and the author didn't like the new terms and conditions or something. I might be misremembering that.
Is that a hosting
where you could-
platform?
yeah,
Yeah,
they host
yeah.
mods. It was Live Another Life or Start Another Life. Basically, instead of waking up in the standard 20-minute sitting on a cart, having people talk at you, now you're in prison, and like that whole thing that everyone made fun of.
Yeah.
Like one of the worst ways to start a game I've ever seen.
It was frustrating.
That is not a fun experience.
Yeah.
Instead, it's very impressive the first time, but like I want to play this game more than once. You wake up. Oh, hello, spider. You wake up in this little like cell next to a shrine, and the shrine has a list of starts you could do. Do you want to be a merchant in this town? Do you want to be a prisoner over here? Do you want to be a warrior over here? And you just start the game. And if you want to do the main quest, go over to where the main quest starts and just do that, and there'll be a dragon, and you can follow it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, skip the whole thing. Oh, that was such a good mod.
That's a fantastic mod. It definitely helps the being able to just jump into the game, and helps with its replayability as well.
So yeah, I think the ability to skipping a tutorial is one thing, but like skipping the first chapter or something, like you've done this, do you want to start from here?
Yeah.
Sounds like a great idea.
Well, often
another
those
one that you said you've been playing.
Sorry, the other thing is those first chapters are really an extended tutorial. Often, it's not just this is how you play the base game. It's like, and here's a little extra. You know, whether it's got a crafting system or whether you need to learn the game loop in a safe place.
There is so much in that game that if you get all of it at once, it's just gonna be massively overwhelming. But if it's okay, you can teleport to your ship, and when you die, you'll be on your ship, and you can craft on it, or you can craft down the ground. But you've only got one planet to worry about. Somewhere deep down here, there are a bunch of these cores that we're going to need you to find. They're going to be in a mine, so look for a mine and then find these cores and come back. And we'll continue with the adventure. All of that's great. What's not great though is when you get the plot points, someone just talks at you for 5 minutes with a little cutscene that you can't skip.
Ooh.
Or as I call it, let's go make a cup of tea.
Well, I think the Final Fantasy games were horrid for that, with unskippable cutscenes. If you were ever a child and you got called through to have dinner and turn the console off or something along those lines, it was like, but I can't.
Make sure you're at the cutscene that Cloud has in Final Fantasy VII that lasts half an hour, and all you have to do is walk through the screens and at one point play a piano.
That's not a game at that point. It goes back to one of the
Housebreak at the time was like, but it's so immersive. It's like, no.
It's a film.
There is a boring film that I have to move a character across it.
Yeah, I definitely think that is something to watch out for.
You've also been playing a lot of Noita. So Noita is another really interesting game. It also looks very pixely. I should point out Starbound looks a lot more cutesy and polished than either Terraria or Noita. Noita has a very rough feel to it.
Yeah.
By design.
Well, it's also awesome because
what's Noita?
Noita again is it's a roguelike, isn't it? Where you start once you die, that's it. You just restart from the very beginning. So you only have one life essentially. That is my understanding because I've not gone deep enough yet. And you go into the mines and you go and find different wands. You can find different upgrades, but it also has a systemic gameplay where if you set fire to something like wood, it will burn. If you set fire to, if you stand in water, you're wet for a bit, which I'm guessing makes you more vulnerable to electric or something along those lines.
They wrote their own game engine so that every pixel could have physical properties.
Yeah.
Mass and gravity and strength and is it burnable? Does it float? Is it corrosive? Like all these other things.
You will choke if you're in smoke. So if you manage to set fire to the mine and you're just in a bit where the smoke's going to come up and fill, you're going to suffocate.
Oh, the corrosive acid is highly flammable, and so it allows you to really. I mean, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's systemic. Yeah, systemic design. There's a lot of systemic gameplay where you know how things behave. They're randomly generated.
Yeah.
but you can plan ahead for them or cause hilarious accidents where huge tons of burning acid land on your head. And now
Or
you've got to swim through it to get to the exit.
when Yan manages to pick up a boomerang grenade wand.
Now, in my defense, I picked
What does
up
this do?
an explosive boomerang wand. And Mikey said, how does that work? And I went, I don't know. Let's find out. Now, I should have thought explosive, boomerang. These are not words I want to put together. But I did not think that.
It appears you have died.
So Noita is one of these games, like a real roguelike, which is an interesting phrase by itself, but insanely difficult. And I am so bad at that game. And I know part of it is you keep playing it and you develop the expertise and you get good at it. But
Yeah.
I sort of play these games for a while and go, yeah, I'm just bad at this. Curse of the Necrodancer is another good one.
Oh, I love that game. That's
I did play a lot of Rogue Legacy and started getting okay at it. But okay was as good as I got.
So with Noita, one of the things that I've personally realised whilst playing it, again, it being very, very difficult, is it seems to be a game that would fall under a high score game. You know, there is no real. I don't know. There might be an end of the game, but
there is.
But it appears at the moment like there isn't an end to the game. It's just you progress and you progress and you progress. So it looks like a high score system.
Biomes and enemies and bosses and all kinds of stuff.
So I think I found an egg. If you go all the way to the left of the map, you can go up on the tree, and if you jump and kind of pulse your jumping ability, you can get onto the egg. I picked up the egg, and then something spawned that chased me and killed me. I didn't. Oh, and then if you go into the little thing, there's a curse that means that you get like 50% more gold or 2-3 times more gold, but the ground you're on becomes toxic and will kill you. Yep. With a delay, so you land on it. This area is now forbidden. Yeah, so I didn't last very long.
Really cool stuff with that game. It's a real example of how to put some interesting randomization stuff in there. Yeah. Like what happens if we allow you to customize the wand? This one will just do random attacks. Are you going to use it? This one will do zigzag style attacks, and this one will do lightning and chain lightning and all the rest of it. You can just pull bits out, and put them into your wand, and it will calculate like how much energy you're going to need for it and stuff like that. Or you could just go set fire to a barrel and kick it over the edge and watch everything explode.
Every time I've tried that so far, I've set fire to the barrel, and when I've kicked it, it's exploded.
Yeah. But it's a really interesting game. Like, it's the idea of a fully physically simulated pixel game is just very smart. And if you're not writing your own engine, that is so intensive. Because I remember you and I thought, well, what happens if we try and do that in Godot? Will Godot like it? And the answer is no. No, it doesn't.
Not unless your pixels are large. Or
if you're doing 1900 by 1200 and each one of those pixels is a physical property and you start moving them, it'll go, no.
There has to be
you will optimize this.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely have to optimize that because it's just so much data being thrown around. But yeah, I mean it's one of those games that keeps drawing me back to it, and I feel like I was getting quite good, and then I died lots. So I think the RNG, as they say, was with me on one playthrough. I was like, oh, I'm getting good. No, and I will say, hi Des. Yeah, I will say that typically I hate randomness in games, but I've constrained that down to the point that say. We've had this conversation with XCOM. You've got a world-class sniper as your character, and he misses a shot from like 2 yards away. It's like, well, the probability's right. You're going to miss some shots, but from a player's perspective, if you've not got direct control, i.e., you're not moving the crosshairs over the target, you expect world-class sniper to not miss a close shot.
So there was a really interesting video about this from. What's the name of that game design channel?
GK Game Maker's Toolkit?
Game Maker's Toolkit. On randomness. And he posited that there are 2 kinds of randomness. One where the input is randomized and one where the output is randomized. So one where you can do something consistently each time but get a random output is not always a good idea.
Well, you can't learn.
It can be very frustrating.
Yeah.
And that would include things like, okay, you have a 90% chance to hit. And so as a human with logical fallacies in my brain, I'm thinking, well, if I miss the last shot, I'm good for the next 9.
Yeah.
But that's not how statistics work.
No. Yeah, and it can be incredibly frustrating. I used to play a game absolutely tons called Jagged Alliance. It was an isometric mercenary game, very XCOM in style. I think it was in between the original XCOM and the remakes and everything. And it had those frustrations in it. It also had the frustrations of you'd just gone up against an army with your 6 mercenaries, and all they dropped was a tin of beans and a napkin, and
They just ate all their guns.
none of the weapons or ammo that was being used against you moments ago.
That's one nice thing about zombie games is, okay, this one was carrying 3 bits of paper and a toothpick,
All
but it
right,
was a zombie.
yeah.
Like it didn't arm itself.
So we were talking earlier about how games establish themselves and how you go through a tutorial. One of the best games recently, and again we're segueing away from old school graphics for a moment, is Doom Eternal. It actually explains to you this is the core game loop. You know, if you need health or ammo, you're going to have to play like this. You know, there's no ambiguity about how you're going to play. The first time I ever played the game, I hated it because I just dismissed those screens and didn't bother reading them. I was like, yeah, I know how to play a first-person shooter.
Well, okay, you're saying the best opening for a game, but
As in tutorial-wise.
Screens,
Oh,
right?
they're
If you put it in
they're
static
dynamic.
screens the player doesn't want to read. Okay,
They're dynamic.
so,
They'll
like,
show you what's going on.
if you have a bunch of screens coming up that the player doesn't want to read, is it working?
I probably should have read them. But the second time I played through, because I read the little I was like, oh, I understand now. Fine. And I'm loving the game now. It's very immersive. It's a very flow state. Once you get into the groove of it,
But it's interesting because Noita goes the other direction, and Noita's opening is excellent. You just walk. There's just you.
It says
and there's the
WASD.
entrance to a cave.
Yeah.
It says WASD. So you press those buttons, you see you move around, and you go into the cave. Like everyone goes into the cave because that's what's interesting. You don't have to, but that's what's interesting. And then there's a thing saying you move your mouse, you move your mouse. There's a thing saying left mouse button, so you do the left mouse button, and you see that. There's a thing saying this button to kick, so you press that button to kick, and the barrel goes over the edge. And that's it. That's everything you get. Everything else you have to figure out by yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very... I suppose it's got a very simple mechanic. You can only do a certain number of things in the game. You can use your potions.
There's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But you need to figure them out as you go. That's the whole point.
Yeah. We've had a couple of comments. So
we have.
Oh yeah, I really
Ratchet
enjoyed.
And Clank, goodness, that takes me back. So there's another interesting retro game that you and I have both played a couple of times together as well, that uses systemic design. There's a lot deeper than it looks, and a lot better design than it looks, and that's Streets of Rogue.
A very fulfilling game when you're playing it.
It's a very simple game. It's a very silly game, but okay. So here's what happens with Streets of Rogue. Streets of Rogue. Do you want to find the link and paste it while I do the waffle?
Yeah.
Streets of Rogue starts with you selecting your character. You've got something that you've unlocked, or if you've been playing a while, you've unlocked them all. Maybe you've even downloaded some from mods or from a pack they made. And they're things like the gangster, or the bartender, or the vampire, or the shapeshifter, or the robot, or whatever, right? And they've all got like a gimmick. So some will be very strong, some will be very weak. Some can't use guns. Like Mikey liked to play the jock for a while, who's very, very strong in melee, can't use guns, but can throw people through walls.
And their ability is they just keep running in a straight line and destroy the level, apart from if it's a solid brick or a metal wall.
But what's interesting is it gives you, like, in order to proceed to the next level, you're given a certain number of quests. Now, you don't have to finish them all, but you're encouraged to do so because they'll level up your character. But these quests are things like go over here and press all the buttons in 30 seconds, or go pick up something from this character, or go kill this person, or go into this place and empty this safe.
Yeah. And to unlock some of the characters, you also need to do certain things within the game world.
Every character has their own personal quest, and to unlock the character, you have to do certain things, like bribe a certain number of policemen. And what's interesting is how you complete these quests is entirely up to you. So if it's, for example, go and pick up this item from a character, you can walk up to the character and talk to them. assuming you're not something like a zombie where he'll attack on sight. And a zombie
Yeah.
has its own fun way of playing. Basically, everyone you kill with a melee thing becomes a zombie. And so you just swamp the level. Which is really annoying for another type of character who doesn't want to fight zombies all day and has stuff to do. But you can go up to the character and, you know, you go up to Mikey and say, hey, you've got the doohickey I want. And he says, well, I'll give it to you for 1,200. And you're like, well, I don't have 1,200, but I guess I can go get it. Or do you? Or do you pull a gun on him and hope he doesn't have a gun? Or do you go and hire some people to come and follow you around and then attack him? Or do you set fire to the building? Or do you blow it up? Or do you look for a power-up that makes you the size of Godzilla and walk through it? Like, the way
there are
do
lots
it,
of different approaches.
Right. And it has this traditional roguelike thing of like, it has little syringes in the game that do a different thing every playthrough.
Yeah.
So sometimes this one might be acid, sometimes it might be. So you could put the syringe into the air vent and see what happens. You can engineer it so that they die. If you're the hacker, you can hack into things, and you have a 50% chance of no one noticing you're doing it. One of the things you could do is set a refrigerator to run, where it'll just go in a straight line and break all the walls. So if you wait for him to be in front of his fridge, you could hack his fridge. Like, there's all kinds of ways you could solve it.
Yeah.
Which led to a situation where Mikey and I were playing. I was a vampire. I could only heal by sucking someone's blood from behind. But if anyone saw me doing it, or if they survived,
yeah,
you know, they'd all chase me. And my quest was I had to track the werewolf down on every level and kill him. Mikey was playing the jock. So Mikey is just hammering through the level, killing werewolves left and right. I can't do my quest.
I didn't realize what I was doing. I was like, this is fun.
It's great. Did you drink the fountain in NetHack? Rogue and NetHack were great. So the reason they're called roguelikes is back in the 80s, there was an ASCII style game, or ASCII game, which means all the graphics were ASCII characters, right? So letters, numbers, punctuation. And it was turn-based. So every time you did something, the world would tick. So you can sit there and figure out what you're going to do, but if you do nothing, the world doesn't move. All the levels were randomized, all the quests were randomized, all the effects of all the potions were randomized, all the weapons were randomized, and it was unfair. Like, that's just part of it. Like, you're going in to see how well you can do, but you're not expected to survive for long. And it sort of spawned a whole, well, two whole genres of games, and people argue about the definitions a lot. The phrases you'll hear are roguelite and roguelike. And the exact definition of both of these is, I don't know.
You humans like categorizing
things.
things.
Because, well, I mean, like, I quite like being able to understand what's happening by looking at the screen.
Yeah.
The original Dwarf Fortress was really hard to play because I can't read the screen. And I don't want to spend a year learning it. Like, I just don't. I understand how fulfilling it is. I just don't want to.
Yeah, it's
a
barrier
much
to
like
entry.
Doom-like games as opposed to FPS. Right. But those kinds of elements make a roguelike. And it's interesting because things like Noita is a roguelike, things like Streets of Rogue is a roguelike. It's in the name, right? Almost nothing about those two games feels the same.
No. They're really not.
In fact, you could even argue that Starbound and Terraria are roguelikes because they have a lot of procedural generation, weapons do random things, all the rest of it. But how far you have to apply the definition of the original Rogue is kind of the contention. And people get very annoyed about these contentions. And all I can say to them is, I was a professor, you know.
So you actually reminded me with what you were saying there about when I was playing game I can't remember the name of, which is always helpful when trying to RimWorld.
Payday 2.
No.
Stealth Run. Oh, RimWorld.
We can do that story another time. So RimWorld, when you were saying, you know, it's unfair, you're not supposed to win it every time. I did not have that mental model in my mind when I started playing RimWorld. Yep. And of course, I'm like, why has this just happened? And literally, I went from being incredibly strong. I was like, oh yeah, I'm really building up a base here and everything. And something like a rat managed to take out my entire collection of people because no one was set to defend. So they just allowed the rat to eat. And I was like,
It's interesting, isn't it? Games that are designed to generate stories, like RimWorld, like Crusader Kings 2 and 3, right? The whole point is Crusader Kings is a dynastic simulator. It's not a area conquering game. It's not, Victoria or
Mm.
Europa 4. It's you start this dynasty, what's going to happen to it? There is no win condition. You can define your own win conditions. Like
Yeah.
you want to come in as the Vikings, and your win condition is um, to demolish the Christian church. Like that's a personal goal you could set. The game doesn't give it to you. There's no
Yeah.
win in that sense. You can certainly lose, but you can't win.
It's interesting because
And
I
if you
I wonder whether so when I'm looking at games that I've really enjoyed and I see negative reviews about it either being boring or took too long, whether someone's approached the game like I have with RimWorld. I mean, if I was to review RimWorld, I wouldn't have said it was a fantastic game because of my experience so far, but I approached the game incorrectly as well.
there's a few games like that, right? Like when I finally played oh, I'm having such a bad time with words today. Blocky stick figure 3D graphics, time moves when you move. Super hot. I hated it. Like I legit hated it because I had built up the assumption that this is a very free form, find your own solution kind of a game, whereas that's actually not the case. There is a way to get through these levels. It's a puzzle game.
Yes.
But I hadn't built up the assumption, so I didn't enjoy the game. Another good example of this is The Cleaner, which I thought was going to be this sort of very tense, stealthy game. It's like, no, it's a board game, effectively. And if you go in with the wrong expectation, the game can just be ruined.
Super hot. Yeah, I think Vertex Rage just said it. Yeah, it is amazing in VR. I think it was designed with VR in mind, and I've played a few games that are
Probably.
you can use both.
I mean, it's a stunning achievement. It's a stunning piece of design. I can absolutely see why people love it. I went in with the wrong expectation and had a bad feeling. Like I just
Oh,
refunded the game.
there was a puzzle
I
game.
do have a story about Payday 2.
Oh, you go ahead with your story, and then I'll talk about The Witness.
All right. Payday 2 is a game that wasn't designed around the idea of stealth, but they sort of put stealth in. So the stealth mechanics are kind of janky, but really satisfying. They work. They put in a couple of levels where you can only stealth it. And they put in some levels where you can stealth it and you'll get more money and it's really fun. And one of them is the first bank you can do. The first bank you can do has exactly 4 guards and a bunch of civilians. What you're supposed to do is go in, shoot them, try and drill through the safe as people come in, all the rest of it. And I was playing with actually just Durgan, who's in chat, and a couple of his friends.
Hey.
And I was teaching them how to do a stealth run. So here's how you do a stealth run. 1, you cannot wear armor. You must wear a suit because if you get too close to somebody wearing an armor, they're going to get really suspicious. 2, nobody puts a mask on until we're ready to go. And once you put a mask on, you stay low, you move very quickly from place to place. You don't creep slowly and get seen. You just zip, 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 zip. You stay in other rooms with cameras and you communicate. All of this is going fine. So one of Durgan's friends, Meat, was like, that's fine. I'll be on the rooftop. I'm just going to wear heavy armor. I'm like, please don't wear heavy armor. That'd be fine. So Durgan is sneaking around by the security room. It's like, okay, I'm breaching the security room. I've taken down that guard. The cameras are down. Fantastic. I'm sneaking around the back. I'm sort of tying up witnesses that could see us from breaking in. And Kat is going around the back and she's getting rid of the guard over there. And Meat's like, okay, I'm standing on the roof. It's kind of dull here. I'm just going to look through the window. So he looks through the skylight, stands on it, falls through. And you've got like 3 seconds before they set the alarm. So we just shout, go loud! And we just kill everybody in 2 seconds. Like everybody dies. Like, well, I guess we can take our time now.
So that's not the level with me and the rocket launcher.
No, trying to teach Mikey how to play stealth games is pointless because Mikey's a troll.
I thought you could see me equipping the rocket. Mike, is that a rocket launcher? Yep.
You're like, well, we're not wearing armor and we don't have heavy weapons. We're going to die.
I had a big bang.
Payday 2 is an amazing game. I really want to play Payday 2 some more. I'm interested to see what happens with Payday 3. I know, is it Sunburst? Sun something. I've sort of had a rocky road the past few years, but it sounds like Payday 3 is back in development. Apparently, it's going to be an open world game set in New York. I have no idea how they're going to get working. Some of Payday 2 is excellent, some of it just isn't.
Yeah.
I've always been bad at the big loud missions, but I can do the stealth runs really well. And there's one stealth mission where you have to go into private military contractors' base and steal enough of their stuff, right? You're just going to take their stuff. And what that is up to you. And it's semi-randomized. So there might be gold, which is really heavy, but quite valuable. Paintings, very light, very valuable. Take those. You only carry a certain amount at a time anyway, but there's a few different ways in. You can plan your way in. You could zip line across. You could go in through the front door and hope no one sees you. You could cut your way in here. You can go in through the sewers. You can go through the roof. Lots of different ways in. And once you get to figure out, like, okay, so the security room is over there. If the guards in the security room are down, the cameras won't report me, and nobody else goes into the security room. So we need to get someone in there. But what's really fun is there's a safe on that level. And that safe requires 2 key cards to be put in within 2 seconds of each other. Random guards will drop that. Now, if you take down more than 4 guards between you on the level, security gets suspicious and calls the cops. On that level, if security is called, you have 60 seconds to get out.
Yeah, I remember that level.
If everyone doesn't get out, you lose. If you manage to get 2 key cards, you can open this safe. It's a huge safe, like a bank vault safe, and it opens really slowly. And it's very big. So if the guards walk past and see the thing's open, they will report you. But inside are 4 very heavy pieces of samurai armor. And there's an achievement for getting the samurai armor out, which is worth a huge amounts of money, which you can then use to, buy more things and expand your character and all the rest of it. So just trying to get 4 people, 3 of whom have not done this level, to safely get this thing out without anyone getting bored and anyone jumping the gun. We did do that one, Doug. And we actually did really well on that one. They saw the safe at the last minute, but we only had those samurai armor pieces left. And you can tell a game's good when you've got war stories about it that you just like telling, and everyone else is like, no, you can be quiet anytime now. I won't. I'm talking.
This is my moment.
We ran out carrying these heavy bags with armor in them through the sewers, being chased by guards. Came out the top, being surrounded by guards. The alarm's already off. You may as well shoot them all. Getting to the truck with like 3 seconds left. That just felt so good. So there's a classic piece of design.
And I think what really adds to that game is the fact that they thought about all of the different approaches that you can possibly take to do that mission. And because it's so open like that, you can do it.
Yeah, before the mission starts, one of you can pay to do things like, okay, so there's a sewer entrance, but it's got bars in the way. Would you like to buy some thermite? You can only buy 2 things before the mission starts, and they will cost you money from your character. So you have decisions to make, but do you want that in? Do you want to use it in a sewer? Maybe you use it at one of these exits, or there's all kinds of stuff you can do.
So The Witness is one of those games that I was thoroughly enjoying with my wife, and then we got lost, and all of the puzzles were far, far too advanced. Or we got lost.
Really bad time with Witness.
I quite enjoyed it until that time I got lost, and we put it down for a couple of weeks. And some of the puzzles, you kind of learn what the symbols mean and how to do the puzzle. And there were some great ones. There's some that require you to listen to the ground because it changes, and that gives you the path. Or there are some where you have to align shadows. All of those were absolutely fantastic. But I do remember then coming back to the game, similar to what we were talking about earlier with The Last of Us, where I just didn't have the knowledge anymore. And so we're in this place, and we started resorting to things like taking a photo of the thing we're supposed to remember in our mind's eye and then go around. That's how to do that bit. But eventually we got to the point where we got lost on the level. I say lost because you can't really get lost, but you can go to puzzles that you have no idea whatsoever on how you can do them.
Like there's a series of puzzles that would gently teach you the mechanics for the next puzzle, but there's no way of telling you which way to go, which I understand why that decision was made. I actually had the opposite problem with it. I got to puzzles that I knew how to do the solution, but I didn't know exactly where he wanted me to stand to see the exact pattern he had. Because if I was too far that way, I saw a different pattern.
Yeah.
And it's like, at this point, this puzzle is no fun. Like, if I need to just keep trying till I find where you want me to stand, then this isn't a fun puzzle.
At that point, it's like a
It's a
point
very
and click
well-made
game where you're
like,
clicking everything in order to
it just
find.
didn't click with
Yeah.
me.
I had many aha moments with it where I felt clever, and that was a great feeling. And then I felt really dumb when I approached it later on. I was like, that was a
People are talking
shame
about
that
some good workout games as well. Like Super Hot VR would be a good workout. I could see that.
Beat Saber. Beat Saber's fantastic for that. It's also
There was a friend of mine who was playing something called Penumbra, but I've never actually seen it. But apparently, it's a really good workout. I'll have to ask him.
I think that's a horror game if I remember correctly. A lot of sneaking and then running from monsters.
Yep. If you guys are picking stuff up, Starbound, I recommend. It's a really cutesy game, but it's really smart. Some of the aliens are randomly generated, some are not. Like there are common creatures on many worlds, and then some worlds will have like a specially generated creature or two, and trying to figure out, is this hostile? Is fun in itself.
Daz, you're right there. The Witness does remind me of Myst. I did try the Myst remakes, and wow, they've not aged well. That's all
Have they not?
I just the way that the puzzles are done. There are a couple of puzzles in Myst that there's no way of really knowing or figuring it out. It's like, oh, well, that's a random combination.
No. I mean, I remember when I played Myst, I was like 13. Me and a friend were playing it together. He was very, very good at maths, and I was very good at the outside the box thinking. And between us, we got through it fine. But there were plenty of puzzles I got to. It was like, I don't get this. And he'd be like, oh, there aren't 360 of these. We have to multiply the angles by this, and it'll work.
Yeah.
Like, why?
What? Yeah, and if
if
there's no hint or lead up to that, it's not really a challenge as such, because there's no information to get the right answer from. At that point, it's like randomly clicking. So, Starbound,
Phantasy Star. I never played Phantasy Star.
I've not heard of Phantasy Star. I'm gonna look it up live.
I think it's a good idea. Hopefully, it's clean.
I might not put it on the screen.
Yeah, good idea.
Phantasy Star. Oh, okay, interesting. I definitely haven't seen
Outer
this
Worlds
before.
is an interesting one. I've not played it, but I have seen some playthroughs of it. It's an interesting little storytelling puzzle game. Well, I say storytelling puzzle game with a story to it. Like you're trying to unravel a mystery.
Yeah, and time resets in like 8.
Wait. I'm not thinking of Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds is the Firefly-inspired pseudo Skyrim in space one, isn't it? What am I thinking of?
Outer Wilds. Yeah, they came out roughly the same time as well. Great naming. It's like the Stream Deck and the Steam Deck. That always gets confused or gets confusing.
Yep.
Yeah, the Time Looper game was. I've started playing that, and there's it's an interesting mechanic. It didn't feel like it were the control system felt a bit weird. But it's one of those things you get used to as you're hopping between the planets. But yeah, a very, very interesting game. As you're constantly being pushed because of the time limit, and some of the puzzles are impossible to do unless you get to them at a certain time, and that may be early on in the game, or that may be later in the game. I have not completed it yet, but I think it's free on Game Pass.
I haven't played it. I don't have Game Pass. That'd be why.
No. That'll be a good answer. Yeah. So one of the things with the
Head over heels. Good gods, that takes me back. I could not make that. Okay.
Yeah.
There was head and there was heels. Heels, I want to say, was the feet. He was a puppy, and head was a cat. And it was a 2-player game, and you like split up and do different puzzles, but sometimes you'd be in the same place. You could stand on top of each other and do it. Oh, I could not make it. I was 11. I could not make that game work.
Oh, well, it is. Oh, apparently it's on Steam. Or a version of it is. Nice.
Pathologic 2. I've heard of it. I've heard really interesting things about it. I've not played it. If it's the one I'm thinking of, it's the one that really nails that slow, dreading horror of surviving an apocalypse. But I might be thinking of the wrong game.
Oh, it does look freaky. It doesn't look comfortable.
Mm.
Let's put
No,
it that way.
very uncomfortable. One more game I'll mention because we're coming up to the hour according to the village clocks.
Is Pathologic 2 the one where you're yeah, I think I've seen some gameplay of this.
I'm glad you asked me that because once again I haven't played it.
I think I've
But I do
I
wanna
think I've
close
seen a
out.
playthrough of it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Speedrunners.
Yes. That's also a very simple art game, but the animation on the characters is phenomenal.
The character and the animation, the learning curve, because you play, it's like, I've got this. And you play with your friends, it's like, I've got this. It's fine. Jelly falls to the back. Mike trolls me. We might make it to the end. Great. And then you play it online and you realize, oh no, my friend, you don't know how to play this game.
You
haven't got the faith. You haven't learned any, because the controls are so tightly done. And there's so much precision involved in them. Like, you don't have to be precise. It's not Super Meat Boy, but if you can be, you can just sail through the level.
Yes, there are moments when we got that, and we're a bit like, how did you get in front of me that quickly? You're like, aha, I know. I've worked out that these two points on the level throw me through. Like, okay. But then on the next round through, you watch what they're doing and you can copy.
Yeah. So my recommendations, if people are looking for things to play and have the spare cash or are waiting for a sale, will be Starbound, Streets of Rogue. Those are my two. What about you, Mikey?
Speedrunners and Flight of what's the Necrodancer? I can't remember
Stick Fight.
Stick Fight. I have mixed feelings about Stick Fight. I love how chaotic
it's awesome
it is,
and it's good.
I love how chaotic it is, but man, it's frustrating.
I've actually been playing it pretty recently with my friend Sam, who's in Canada, and like once a week or so he'll call and we'll play for half an hour.
It's great for picking up and just.
Oh yeah, for like a half hour or 45 minutes with your friends, it's fantastic. Crypt of the Necrodancer is a fantastic game, and I am so bad at it.
It took me a while to get,
and it's not even
into
the rhythm. I can do rhythm games really well, but roguelikes, no.
Learning the patterns can take a few whiles, a bit of a while to do, because the characters move in their own set way. So sometimes you have to sit there and just watch their patrol route, so you don't accidentally jump into them.
And then you can get the other soundtracks and like get your heavy metal version or whatever. It's really good.
Yeah, I love the soundtrack. I think that was a great addition to the game, and it all being linked together, being a rhythm game and all that. Yeah, fantastic.
So before we sign off, does anyone have any thoughts, concerns, interpretive dances, jingles? I got them in the wrong order this week.
That's fine. I don't even know what they are.
I'm tired.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Mikey, what's your plan for the week?
My plan for the week. I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm hoping that there's going to be another launch in the next week or two, and we'll let you know what that is around the time. I've also been working, and this won't be the launch, but I've also been working a lot on some of the music for the action RPG. I've been trying out different styles, different genres, and seeing how they all fit together. So I'm looking forward to basically showing off those.
Oh, this was the yodeling that you were telling me about. He didn't tell me about that. Very cool. I intend to play more with Make Human for Blender, see if it's something that is useful for us.
That was interesting, looking at that
some
today.
Code to replace some missing videos.
Dun dun dun. Awesome.
Meow, meow, meow. Oh, and play with Godot 4.
Is Alpha 16 out yet?
It's on Alpha 15 now. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's every 2 weeks. No, it doesn't look like.
But I want it now. I'm fed up of waiting for.
I want it all. I want it all.
How's A15?
Alpha 15, very good. I need to figure out how retargeting animations work because I haven't really looked at that yet, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
Because Mikey and I have been talking for a while about, okay, so if we want to make different size characters, we can't you reuse the animations because the rig doesn't. You can't scale an animation rig.
Yeah.
Because it's using positional information, and if you change the positions, you break the animation.
You end up with Spaghetti Boy because all of the
right, like it just doesn't know what it's doing. Like it's applying. Take your last position and rotate by 15 degrees along this axis, and then move by this on the Z, and then you've changed where those are.
Yeah,
and it doesn't work. But if you can retarget them,
yes,
suddenly it's a lot more interesting.
Yeah, we want to be able to reuse things as much as possible. Of course, one of the solutions is you make a unique rig and unique animations for every different type of character. And whilst that is, perfectly valid, it's not something that you want to have to do if you can avoid it. Especially if the majority of our audience are focused
it's very
on
valid if you're making a large game with lots of people.
But most of our audience aren't doing that.
Doing characters and the public people doing animation. Right. Like if it's just you, being able to reuse the rig is a great idea.
Yeah. Yes, and as Dad says there, I wonder if their retargeting will use some sort of driver mechanics in Blender. It looks like it does use something in the background. And the way that they've done it, I think it will mean that you still have to have bones named the same. That's important. But it does the appropriate scale and rotation resetting that's required.
I will have a play and let you know.
Yeah. A Mixamo is a great way of approaching animations. Unfortunately, we can't give you Mixamo animations in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, Mixamo is fantastic if you're doing like a solo dev game, but if you want to provide course materials, you can't use Mixamo. It's against the terms and conditions.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've learned about Mixamo is occasionally you get too much animation data and then your character files end up massive because all of that information is baked in. And then when you try and extract it, you've got far too much information. Ultimately, you can cut down the amount of keyframes and also the number of bones. It is very specific, the number of bones you have. But if you've got simplistic characters, you don't need all of the bones. So
I'm just enjoying the way you say massive.
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 Big it up now.
It is limited to only humanoids. It's true. So if you are a horse, you can't use it.
This is very true. And of course, if you've got a different character, if you do have a spider or a horse, then you're going to have to learn some rigging. But the other thing is, if you don't know about rigging, then you can't fix
spiders are also
stuff.
not how to use it. Oh, where's that spider go?
He's gone on holiday.
All right, I got the character creator. Oh yeah, we should probably tell people what we're talking about. Make Human is a character creator. It's on a FOSS license, on the AGPL license, with the output being CC0. So your FBX files that you create from it are yours.
Yeah.
They've released an alpha of Make Human for Blender as a plugin, which just sits in your Blender and does it all and applies a rig. And do you want to rigify it? And it's really cool.
Yeah. It's
probably not.
It's incredibly useful. I've only played for it for literally 15 minutes. It looks very useful if you want a fully rigged humanoid character with fingers and everything.
Yeah.
Again, we looked at it in all seriousness. Could we use this as an entry point and then modify it and move back from there? And it just it turned into, oh, this is a lot of work retopologizing.
You would actually have to manually remove a whole bunch of vertex groups and all the rest of it. And at that point, it's like, maybe just make your own.
Yeah, it would definitely be quicker in that case.
All right, I need to eat something.
Hom nom nom. Thank you everybody for tuning in this week. It's been great to see you, and we will be back next week. Next week is update week. It's Toucan Talk. Awesome.
Canopy chat.
Yes. Thanks everybody for joining us, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Press it.
Now I'm getting there.
Press it.
I'm getting there. Bye.
Press it.